Hello, and welcome to Made in the County. On today's podcast, I will be discussing tales of resilience made right here in Prince Edward County. But before we begin today's show, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are recording at the Regent Theater, which is located on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and other nations, recorded and unrecorded. We are grateful to the generations of ancestral stewards and caretakers of this land for the opportunity to live, work, and share stories in this place we all call home. In this podcast, I will open up about the storms I have faced throughout my years in the music industry and how a pandemic almost silenced my music career. We will also feature audio from two incredible local writers, an award-winning poet named Shauna Hogan, and a monologue performance from 12-year-old Rihanna Harris. I will also give a sneak peek at one of the Regent Theater's upcoming special screenings with award-winning filmmaker Tess Gerard, who will be joined for a Q&A with writer Krista Delvey. And finally, I will be joined by my good friend and fellow homegrown county musician, Tony Forbes, for a special performance and conversation. Let's get started. I am best known as the lead singer of the award-winning country music duo Instant Rivalry, but over the years, I have worn many other hats, from organizing community events to being a teacher to the hat that I'm wearing today as your host of this podcast. Since we are sharing stories of resilience and what comes after the storm, I thought I'd offer an exclusive look into how I have weathered the big storms of my life and how one of those most recent storms almost ended my music career. But most importantly, the significance of resilience. Resilience is defined as a psychological capacity to adapt to stressful circumstances and to bounce back from adverse events. It's a highly sought-after personality trait in the modern world. We can think of resilience as a sort of muscle that contracts during good times and expands during bad times. In that sense, the best way to develop resilience is through hardship. Some philosophers have pointed out through the years, such as Seneca, who noted, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as the labor does the body," and Nietzsche, who famously decreed, "That which doesn't kill us makes us stronger." The storms of my life have undoubtedly made me the strong woman I am today. My resilience and hard work ethic is seen as an admirable trait. But what many people don't see is how a lifetime of relying on resilience can take its toll and become a form of addiction. Growing up in rural Prince Edward County with big dreams of being a successful musician, I faced adversity on almost every front since the age of 14. I was bullied in school for it, constantly told by adults to choose a safer career path, told by executives that they weren't looking for female singers because we didn't sell. But that didn't stop me. Out of respect for my passion, and in spite of those who would try to dissuade me from my career path, I just learned the value of drive and hard work. And so began my addiction to persevering and overcoming the odds, to resilience. If there was an obstacle, I found a way around it, or a way to get over it, even from a young age. If there wasn't money to record, I'd take on a job with the few remaining hours I had left in a week. If I was bullied in school, I'd drop out and teach myself to not have to deal with it. I didn't have time for the distraction. Even if the path was more difficult, if it got me closer to my goal, I would gladly travel it. I finished my high school education through independent learning while working relentlessly towards putting out Instant Rivalry's first album, traveling to Nashville and performing shows every weekend. For every victory in my life, well, it seemed there was a major setback, that whole one step forward, two steps backward deal. On the eve of the release of our first album, our band fell apart, making it impossible to tour upon its release and recoup a single dollar spent on recording. The stress of it all led to me contracting an autoimmune disease that I will live with for the rest of my life, making it harder to stay well and maintain my mental and physical resilience. Over the years, I would face losing relationships, job opportunities, family members, and have financial battles throughout my 20s. But there was a period of time where it all felt like the stars were aligning. Instant Rivalry was winning awards, playing huge festivals, recording our second album in Nashville, Tennessee with some of the greatest musicians on the continent. And when we released that album, Whiskey and Lead, We had a tour of multiple sold-out shows, international critical appeal, and success with our first radio single. Things were finally happening. All of my struggles and my resilience seemed to be coming to fruition, and finally, it was paying off. I felt whole and I felt happy. Like maybe the past 13 years of climbing and that uphill battle, it was worth it. I was gonna make it, but then the pandemic came. And after a lifetime of bouncing back and finding a way through the impossible, I knew that this wasn't going to be an exception. I partnered with Back 40 Productions. I wasn't going to let this pandemic keep me from making music and losing all that good momentum that we worked so hard for. So together with my brother Caleb, we provided free music and entertainment to thousands of fans throughout that first lockdown. We engaged the audience and played all of their requests, which resulted in learning over 500 cover songs. Sometimes in genres we didn't even play or didn't even know how to play. We put on holiday-inspired broadcasts and employed other musicians, and most of that money was coming out of our pockets to pay the musicians or to purchase the equipment to allow us to live stream and video. But we were staying relevant. We were being resilient. But on the inside, I was burning out at a rate that I couldn't understand, and worse, didn't even notice. 1 year into the pandemic, my mental health started to quiver, as I was diagnosed with severe hearing loss at the age of 29 that was being caused by my autoimmune disease. Something that I hadn't noticed totally coming on, or did I? I did, but due to my warped resilience and addiction to succeed no matter the cost, I didn't seek medical attention right away. And now the effects, they're unchangeable. And my life's entire work, well, it's being faced with an obstacle that I can't change nor alter. My hearing's going. So now it was time to prepare myself for what was coming after the storm. And I was faced with a difficult decision. Is it time to quit? Instead of making that decision, well, I took a break. I shifted my focus. If I couldn't have my music career, well, I thought there's got to be a way that I can help others achieve theirs. So still unknowingly suffering from resilience in one form or another, I shifted that focus, and I finished my post-secondary education through NYU's prestigious Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music in Tisch. I started building my resume, working with arts councils and in the sound engineering field and in radio. But after 8 months of shying away from all musical performances and just focusing on education and not answering that constant question of, why isn't Megan Hutton performing with Instant Rivalry? Well, I decided to take 30 days with the sole intent to pick up my guitar and write what could very well be my final album. For the first 3 days out of those 30s, I sat in silence, scratching out notes to fake tunes that held no meaning to me. But on the fourth day, on that fourth day, I sang, and I heard my inner voice more clearly than I had in nearly 2 decades. And I wrote the first song and took the first step towards returning to my music. In a time of uncertainty and what felt like an endless pandemic, I realized I was no longer in the midst of the storm. And this song was a clear rainbow promising that better days were to come. The song is called Healing, and I'll actually play it live and acoustic on my piano. But I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that the last time I performed on the Regent Theater stage was to a sold-out room filled with people from Prince Edward County and surrounding areas. And today, the theater is empty, but I've never been more happy to play on this stage.
You never know how much baggage you're carrying till that heavy brings you to your knees, and the weight of the unforgiven keeps you from getting on your feet. You never know how much you've been hanging on till your hands, they can't reach no more. When you see your lover waving, but you can't open up the door. You need healing, you need time to look in the mirror and truly recognize that you need healing, that you need peace, a little light through the darkness, a little rescue. You need healing. Well, you surrounded yourself with distractions, the wrong people, and you wonder why you can't lead, 'cause the blind can't lead the blind. When you need healing, you need time to look in the mirror and truly recognize that you need healing, you need peace, a little light through the darkness, a little rescue. You need healing, healing, yeah. When you're broken and you're weary and you're scared you've lost your way, and you're far from where you started, but you'll make it home again. You need healing, you need time to look in the mirror and truly recognize that you need healing, that you need peace, some light through the darkness, a little rescuing. You need healing, healing, yeah.
To be a successful artist, resilience is key, not just for musicians, but for actors and poets and writers alike. Through great pain and joy, we find inspiration, but without resilience, sharing that art becomes difficult. The Prince Edward County Arts Council 4th Annual Wind and Water Writing Contest is just around the corner. This year's theme is transformation. Quinte and Prince Edward County writers are to interpret the theme in a unique and exciting way and to win a host of prizes, get recognition, and of course, just celebration. The deadline to enter is March 31st, 2022. To celebrate, we are looking back to one of last year's winners, Shauna Hogan, and she'll be reading her poem, Sanctuary, which placed first in the poetry category. Enjoy.
Hello, my name is Shauna Hogan, and I've lived in Prince Edward County for over 30 years on the beautiful northern shores of Lake Ontario. Today I'm reading my poem entitled Sanctuary. It won the 2021 Wind and Water Writing Contest for Poetry. The theme of the contest last year was unity. I was inspired to write this poem when I saw a stretch of water in winter at the lakeshore that was a warm, icy blue. The color reminded me of a sweater of the same color given to me by a friend. From this momentary glance and association, the poem unfolded and then expanded in the last stanza to evoke the theme of unity in greater depth. Hopefully this stanza invites you to reread the entire poem with an expanded vision. Seek the living presence and you shall live. Amos chapter 5, verse 6. You gave me your old pullover sweater, the color of today's winter river, infused with morning sun, water smooth as a satin ribbon bordering the shore, its shimmering sheen touching an inner edge of frozen distance, the expanse of calm, glazed water, still as the hush of air hovering a mountain summit. Mountains are my healing house, you say, thrilling at risky climbs, hiking off trail, guided solely by compass and the gaze of stars, your body dwarfed by boulders, cliffs, the vastness surrounding in wide open wilderness, where solitude imbues peace, quiet as your favorite early hours, deep darkness turning to dawn. But at the top of the mountain here is pure ease, the rush of silence, its invitation, the long view, earth touching sky, continuous, the luxurious breaths rising and falling in resonance, and your soul fills where time is presence. The day after my mother died, you said, she is now actually free to be right there with you in the love you have together. Yesterday, she couldn't.
Chatterbox Theater Company is one of Prince Edward County's youngest not-for-profit theater groups, led by co-founder and creative director Georgia Papanicolaou, who has been an actor and director who has studied film and theater in Toronto. The pandemic halted the highly anticipated production of Spring Awakening for Chatterbox Theater, but Chatterbox did their best to continue to engage actors through virtual play readings, and by early 2021, they began writing, directing, and mentoring all ages, but most notably, youth performers between the ages of 5 and 30 for their Speak It series, which contained monologues written about social justice, mental health care, and more. 12-year-old Rihanna Harris shared a true story through a performance through the Speak It series, which was released to Chatterbox social media pages on February 24th. Rihanna showed that adversity and resilience can be faced at any age, anywhere. This is Rihanna Harris with a performance of Rise Above.
A 7-year-old girl sits in class with her hair up in a big curly poof on top of her head, held by a big sparkly scrunchie. Stars adorn her dress. As her favorite songs swirl around in her head, she dreams of dancing. Today, in her class, a lesson will be learned. The teacher pulls out a book. As she flips the pages, she rocks back and forth. Leaning forward, she continues to read the book. The room started to feel heavy. The air felt thick, and the little girl felt as if she was punched in the stomach. Apartheid, segregation, fences, whips, shacks, shackles. Black people sold by contract like property. She was the only black girl in her class. Feeling frustrated and needing a break, she went to the bathroom to escape. Within every step, she could feel eyes piercing the back of her head. As she reached the bathroom door, kids from her class started pushing and kicking her. With shock and disbelief, she pressed on to get in. The kids told her again and again that she didn't belong. "Didn't you hear? You can't come in here. This is a white school." She didn't push them or hurt them. She could have, but she didn't. All she did was say, "I'm allowed to be here. I have every right to be here. And segregation ended a long time ago." Feeling like an outsider, the little girl decided to use the janitor's washroom for a few days to avoid any problems with these kids. She never felt that way before. Not wanting to use the bathroom hidden behind bleach and dirty mops, she decided to tell her parents what had happened to her. Her mom began to cry and got in the car to talk to the school. When her mom got back, the parents sat the little girl down and decided to teach her a very important lesson. Her parents told her to use her voice, that a voice is a powerful weapon, that any voice is powerful when used with grace and respect, that grace and respect would get her far in life. That little girl doesn't hold grudges. She forgave. Why? Because she knew they were only being taught the negative things that happen in segregation. Some people think that because life was a certain way that it can't change. She knew that when they said sit, she would stand up. That was me. I was that little girl. I believed, like John Legend said, one day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. I stood up in the face of adversity, and I still stand up till this day. When it's all said and done, we will cry glory.
On March 21st at 7 p.m., the Regent Theatre will be showcasing As the Crow Flies as part of the special screening series, funded by the Ontario Arts Council with help from Telefilm. Tess Gerard, the director of As the Crow Flies, and Krista Dalby, director of The Perfect Match, will screen their films March 21st and be in the theater for a special live Q&A. Following the films, be sure to get your tickets for this incredible opportunity. The special screening series spotlights Canadian filmmakers and local talent on the big screen, featuring Q&As with the filmmakers. Here is a sneak peek of what a special screening conversation is like from the most recent lockdown when Tess Gerard and Krista Delby discussed their films.
Hi there, Tess.
Hey, Krista, how you doing?
I'm great. How about you?
I'm pretty good, considering we're in a lockdown, but we'll get through this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm excited to talk to you today about your film, As the Crow Flies.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you about yours.
So maybe we could start by, you could just tell us what is As the Crow Flies about?
So As the Crow Flies is a feature-length film, and it follows a group of 17-year-olds getting their pilot's licenses. And so it follows them from stay of a 7-week intensive course, where some of them haven't even flown a plane before, and to the end of the course, where they're fully licensed pilots.
So is it a documentary?
Yeah, it's a documentary, and it's a metaphor for coming of age film in the sky.
Nice. What was your inspiration for this film?
So I actually did the program that these kids did, these young adults. And so it's a cadet program, and I was a cadet myself, and it's a scholarship, and I received the scholarship. And so far too many years ago than I want to claim, I did the program, and I just always thought it was an amazing story and an amazing metaphor. And I wanted to go back there and tell the story of what these kids have achieved.
What was the process like of filming this? Like, how long did you spend filming it, for example?
So I started on the first day that these young adults go to camp, and then I followed them right through the end, and then we wrapped up and after 7 weeks, and then we all said goodbye, and then it was about a year of editing after that. And the editing is also intense as well. And it's kind of this, both production and editing are their kind of a long distance run of their own kind of challenges.
Did you edit it yourself?
No, so Ryan Knopf, who also lives here in Prince Edward County, he was the editor on it. And we made it with the NFB, the National Film Board of Canada. So it's the first time that I've ever worked with an institution like that.
And were there any challenges during the filming?
Yes. The film itself, so as someone who's gone through the program, I had a lot of empathy for what the kids are going through. And getting your pilot's license is extremely intensive. It's hard to get, in 2 years, let alone in 7 weeks. And at the age of 17, you're going through a lot, and you're experiencing heightened emotions, and flying itself is its own heightened emotion. And it's quite dangerous, and their lives are at risk. And there is always a sense of safety throughout. And the airport and the cadets always practiced highest safety, but you're always coming up against these extreme challenges where you're really put to the test. And so going through that as well with them was, it was very stressful. And then making a film was stressful as well. So if you compile all that together, and not only that, you'll see in the film the cadets, they live in a hotel, and it's quite a, standard hotel, kind of bland. And my room, I lived in the hotel with them, and it overlooked a sea of box mall parking lots. And so there was quite a lot of isolation. And so the cadets weren't allowed to go out, and they had to study in the evenings. And it was it's a cadet program, so it's militaristic. And so we would basically wake up at 5 a.m., be in the hotel, go to the airport, which is a whole other world of asphalt. And the freedom that they experienced was in the sky. And so I experienced that same freedom with them. And there's a lot of parallels to what we've been going through in the last 2 years of feeling confined in the same space, with the same people, under a lot of stress, and then having these brief moments of freedom. And I think it really helped me, having gone through that twice, both as a cadet and then while making the film, kind of helped me through the last couple of years of the pandemic, of like finding those beautiful moments of joy when you just get released for a second and can experience something, especially in nature.
Yeah. I'm curious about how you go about shaping a documentary, because I think, like, how do you go about shaping the narrative? Because you know, documentary, I think maybe people assume you just like show up and see what happens, but from what I understand, you have to have kind of a plan going into that. I'm just curious how you work with narrative to create that storyline.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's actually quite intensive before you're going into it, and a lot of documentary funds require you to write a script, and it's called the documentary script. And that sounds very contradictory, but a funder really wants to know what they're getting into before they give you money. And these are humans. This is real life. It's not predictable, but you kind of have to give your best educated guess, and you have to write that script in a language that represents the way in which you are going to film it. And for my films, they're very visual and very poetic, and that's really challenging to explain. Like, okay, now we're going to see a shot of a cloud for a whole minute, and you're really going to feel it. And I have to do these long passages about what the clouds mean, and intercut that with things you predict people will say. And sometimes I do that by interviewing people first and they're called pre-interviews, so they're not recorded in the documentary, but I use them as scripts, and I take excerpts of those interviews and write them into the script. In this case, I didn't have that opportunity because I met the kids on the day they arrived to camp. So I was kind of going with the flow. But the whole purpose is writing the script is that you get to understand what you're going to make so that you can see those things when they're happening. And when those things don't happen, you can understand what your themes and metaphors are so that you can abandon the script and know how to like get a similar structure along the way. And I'm amazed usually when I'm making films about how much it actually resembles the original script in the first place. And that when I deviate and get a bit lost, I actually end up looking at the original treatment and going right back to that. And it helps me get set back along my way.
Wow, that's so interesting. So your film is going to be coming up at the Regent Theater. What do you think, like what do you get out of seeing your own film on the big screen?
I think films need to be shared in a community. There's something about being in a room with people's reactions and feeling the energy in the room, also seeing it on the big screen and feeling like you're immersed in it. It's just not something that you can replicate necessarily at home. There's distractions at home. You have the choice to turn it off. And I love that you are kind of trapped in this room together to go on this journey and this experience, and you get to be taken on a journey where you don't have a choice in whether or not you choose to interact with it. You can if there's a slow part, you have to slow down. If there's a heightened part, you can't turn it off because you're too nervous, or you can't really look away. And I love how you're taken on a journey in these processes, and seeing that on a small screen, or seeing it, even if you have a big projector at home, it's just not the same. And collective energy in art is something that we've really lost in the past 2 years. And we had a brief moment where it opened back up again. And in that time, I went to, a couple movies and a couple concerts, and feeling even just people's heartbeats around you and their tension and their excitement is just something that honestly really keeps us going and makes us feel that we're connected with other people. And I've really understood these past couple years of like that collective experience of art is what makes us human.
I agree completely. I mean, I come from a theater background, and currently, community arts is what I do, and it has been very challenging of not being to be able to be in giant groups of people. That's my jam.
Yeah.
So yeah,
not hearing collective joy and not being able to give that collective joy to people is a big deal. So talking about theater and your films, let's talk about your film. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so my film is a short film. It's called The Perfect Match. It was a Bravo Fact film. And really, it came directly from the theater because in 2008, I participated in an incredible creative boot camp called the Lib Lab, which stands for, it was a program of Tapestry New Opera Works. And the idea is it's a composer, librettist, laboratory. So I had never worked in opera before. I had written many plays at that point, and I saw this opportunity come up, and I jumped on it. So basically, what we did is there was 4 writers and 4 composers, and we worked together for 10 days. So on the first day, the writers would write a script, an opera script. Then you would hand it to the composer at the end of the first day. The composers would usually stay up all night long writing the music. They would bring in the music the next day. They would hand it to the musicians and opera singers, and then it would be performed like later that day. And so we did this same process 4 times over 10 days. So I wrote 4 short operas, the words, the lyrics in 10 days. And then this was one of the outcomes. So I was working with a composer from New Zealand, Anthony Young, who was a wonderful collaborator. Because when I said, hey, Anthony, I would like to write an opera for sock puppets, he was like, yes, let's do it. And not every composer maybe would have such enthusiasm for such a bizarre idea. And it is, I'm so proud of it, honestly. So he and I performed it. We puppeteered it ourselves several times. So me and the composer hiding behind like music stands with like a scarf hung over it. We were puppeteering as these professional opera singers are singing our opera. And it quickly rose to the top amongst all of the creative pieces as we have a winner here. There was something about it that people just really reacted positively to. And so, a year later, we had the funding, and it was quite a lot of funding for a very short film because it required full orchestration, professional opera singers, professional puppeteers, custom sets to be built. We had, and we were working with like an amazing camera. I'm like, I don't know all the technical stuff, but it was a big camera on a boom, so we could get some really beautiful angles. We had to have lighting professionals. It was a very large production for such a short film that had started out very modestly with literally a couple socks with button eyes sewn onto them. And I've only seen it on a big screen once. When it was premiered alongside a bunch of other live operas in Toronto. It has gone on to several film festivals and stuff, which I have not been able to attend. But very excited to see it on the big screen. It is it's a love story. The director, Tom Diamond, actually claimed it was probably the world's first same socks opera, because it's a love story and it's sung by 2 male voices. So it's quite the something.
And were all these people they were working in person together? It wasn't, you say you were working with someone from New Zealand. Was he there with you?
Yeah, came to Canada for it. So this all took place in Toronto.
Okay. And that's something that can't be done now. It's really this is kind of a relic of before times. Yeah,
certainly. And I have to say, just that program itself was one of the best creative experiences I've ever had. I felt so challenged by this, working in a new format, and it was so exciting. And working with multiple different creative partners, like day after day, of people you've never met, and you just get slammed together and have to make something. It was a very exciting creative process. And out of all of the short operas that have come out of this program, I think this is the only one that has actually gone on to be a film. And because I work in the live arts primarily, so actually having a film that endures afterwards is really beautiful to have. I usually post it every year on Valentine's Day because it's a very sweet, heartwarming story. So, yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it and seeing that collective energy in the theater. That I love our theater so much, and the community that it brings together. And it's really appropriate that our 2 films are playing together as 2 community members. And I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, looking forward to it too. And we'll have more of a chat on stage after the screening.
All right, come see our films, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Tess. Great talking to you.
All right, great talking to you.
The next guest on today's episode of Made in the County After the Storm is a man who is another generational county family guy. His roots here are deep and his memories fond. His song $100 Roads depicts the sliding changes that he has seen in his beloved hometown over his lifetime. His raw and authentic performance style makes him a fan favorite. His guitar playing is second to none, and his prodigious voice is soulful enough to stop you in your tracks. And plus, he's just a really nice guy. Please welcome my friend and fellow homegrown musician Tony Forbes to the Regent Theater stage for Made in the County After the Storm. Tony will be performing 2 original songs live here on Made in the County.
Wow, that was a beautiful intro. Thank you. You're so well spoken. I don't think half of that was true, but let's go with that. Sitting with my feet up, wishing I was out there. Fire's burning faster, depending on the wheels. Heart's been wondering about those miles. 11,000 tire chunks, bunches all the while. Cabin fever drains my soul. Heart's not going there where you've been so long. Sitting with my life up, wishing I was up there. Eagles flying faster, singing what he feels. Oh, heart's been wondering about those miles. 11,000 stolen hearts, crying all the while. Cabin fever drains my soul. Heart's not going there where you've been so long. Whoa, 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 whoa. These are my friends, don't you see, don't you see? I'm in the corner feeling rather heavily. How can you be helping me, cause you don't understand? This is just a disability. Oh, this is just a disability. Oh, come, just hold my hand. The wind will blow me across the sea, over to the sand. Go. Winding it back all the way to the year 2000. Yeah, remember those days?
Yes, I remember the year 2000. I think I was 9.
You were 9. I was old enough to be on my own. I think I was, 21? Yeah, something like that, 20 or 21. Living in British Columbia, working the oyster raft. And that song just happened. You know how those ones work, where it just falls in your lap one day. Sitting there and just writing about my surroundings. Sometimes that works. When I came home from work and was getting the fire burning and feeling homesick for here and my friends, and kind of like living in the wilderness of Desolation Sound, Cortez Island, British Columbia, and not really knowing anyone of the 600 people that lived on the island. you know, growing up in small town Bloomfield, I kind of knew how small towns worked, but that was a whole nother dynamic there. And that one just fell in my lap, and it's always been a favorite of everybody's. I dig that one. I was kind of into Sublime at the time, as you can tell.
Well, you went from one island to another, but no island is quite like Prince Edward County.
Freshwater Newfies. Song number 2?
Song number
Song
two.
number 2. All right. The Way, another one that fell into my lap, and I opened the book and I started writing on the left-hand page, so that you don't have to turn the page in the middle of the song. The verse is there and there, so you just. And I wrote it all down in honestly, 10 minutes, under 10 minutes. The poem just fell out of me. Didn't scratch out a word. It didn't change a word. It's one of the ones that I was like, okay, this is a gift. I'm gonna kind of roll with this, you know. And performing it over the years has been another impactful thing for everyone. They kind of pick up on this one, but I thought it goes really well with kind of what we're talking about today. And there's things you can't change, you know. Life just happens, and you gotta roll with the punches and evolve and adapt, and as my good friend Jesse would say, patience and persistence.
All the words I didn't say, all the nights that turn to days, all the games we didn't play. How can we just run away? All the ups that went right down, all the smiles that turned to frowns, all the wheels that whirled round. Why not turn and hit the ground? All the clouds upon the wind, all the people and their sins, all the swirling drunken spins. Don't just turn and give right in. It's the way some people say we'll be better off in this world. It's the way God knows I pray we'll be better off in this world. It's the way, never be afraid. All the blood that turned to wine, all the rumor on my mind, all the creeping hands of time. Can we be each other's mind? All the armies and their wars, all the lovers that they tore, all the children never born. Can we be the ones to scorn? All the music in our hearts, all the practiced rehearsed parts, all the finished open starts. Can we ever top the charts? It's the way some people say we'll be better off in this world. It's the way God knows I pray we'll be better off in this world. It's the way, never be afraid. All the faces in the crowd, all the fathers standing proud, all the wind and flying clouds. Can we ever feed their mouths? All the gold and flowing sand, and all the time running through our heads. All the people who make your stands. We can live without a plan. All the tailwinds blowing east, all the rich men and their feasts, places that we meet. Can it be love break free? It's the way some people say we'll be better off in this world. It's the way God knows I pray. We'll be better off in this world. It's the way, never be afraid.
Wow, Tony, that was fantastic. Would you say we're better off in this world, never being afraid?
You got to deal with your emotions, man. You go through them all.
Absolutely.
You just got to take them as they come.
Absolutely.
You know, the more you fight them, the more you bottle things up, the harder tomorrow is usually.
Amen. Now, what would you have to say would be your biggest story of resilience?
Well, definitely the last couple of years have been testing on the whole world, and that was kind of put on us. But as for tests I gave myself, when I graduated high school, I wasn't happy with myself and my life, and got on a bicycle and lost a lot of weight and rode a lot of kilometers, and then got talked into riding a bicycle across the southern United States of America for a whole winter. So those 5,000 kilometers were a test.
Wow, that's an experience.
That was a hell of a test.
And did you learn anything about yourself on that trip?
Well, then I knew all the words to all the Pink Floyd songs I was singing as I rode across the desert. I knew that music was not going to stop coming out of me, no matter how much I tried to just kind of make it something that was me. It wasn't just a part of me, but it is me. Like, I am an artist, you know, between the cooking and the paintings and the music. It's kind of been something comforting as well as creative, as well as, you know, an outlet all these years.
Yeah, and you were saying that song, The Way, it started as a poem. And I know you too as a photographer, like you are just an artist in everything that you do.
Yeah, well, it's just how I see life, and I want to share. And we have the ability to share it now. It's like, you know, back in the day, I had the key to the darkroom at the high school. I was a school photographer, and I was processing celluloid film in black and white, and never expected to have a high quality, endless amount of instant gratification photograph power in my hand, as well as the world's knowledge. But I don't know, there's just a level of me that has to express myself. I think Master Bruce Lee talks about it. Martial arts is an expression. It's like a dance, you know. Each person has their own style. You can learn the same style as the guy next to you, but you're both going to express it differently. I find that just having the food and the photography and the painting and the music gives me all these different ways to express myself. Like, I don't dance anymore, that's for sure.
But do you know what, Tony? It was your specific way of expression and the way that you see the world and the kind of artist that you are that made me want to reach out to you last fall to do some songwriting and to collab, because it feels weird to be in Prince Edward County for so long, the two of us, and have never actually worked together. So for anybody that's listening, I was the artist in residence through the Prince Edward County Arts Council in October of 2021, and I invited Tony in to do some songwriting. And we also played a show together that month. We spent our first session basically brain dumping as much as we could to write a song about his dad, but it was on the second session where we really kind of clicked, and we were talking about some really hard stuff that was happening in our lives, going through breakups, and
we went from just an honorable, like, that particular song that I wanted to write, and it felt like we were fishing and not getting any bites, and I brought up that other topic, and it's something that you and I know are both as an artist, we're both very passionate people. We're, you know, and romantic and stuff. So there's that level of long-term mindset where you get yourself set up in a particular way of living, and this is kind of end game plan. I'm aiming for long term here, and then all of a sudden, the slate is wiped clean. And you go through so many emotions you never thought, and it's really heavy. And I thought that once we got talking about that, we both got quite emotional and tackled a lot of stuff that day.
The most existential yet angry yet happy song I think I've ever written was that one.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to actually revisiting that. I remember I had a gig that night and getting my dinner, and I was literally sitting in the driveway eating my dinner, weeping to your audio that you sent me of this version of this song, and I'm sitting there eating my supper, crying in the driveway in the car with all my gear loaded, going, "What a day!" Like, thanks, Megs.
And it was what a typical musician day would look like from Prince Edward County, where you're working at your full-time job or your part-time job, and then you're running to a fun little songwriting session, and then you're grabbing dinner on the go in your car because you're on your way to make another $100 or $200 at a gig. And that's just kind of how, our normal lives would have been. And, the pandemic has changed that quite a bit. You know what? That same month, I'm going to just pivot here for a second. That same month, not only did we get to write together, but we got to perform together.
In a legendary county-bred lineup.
So my goal for that was to bring together all these homegrown musicians in an acoustic setting and just let us all perform kind of in a way that we've been performing throughout this storm with this pandemic, but with an audience, just acoustic guitars. And I knew that there was no way that performance was happening without you there.
Oh.
How did that feel for you, getting to play with people like Mark Despo, Annalise
I mentioned
Nerona?
it, yeah, Annalise, Craig Foster, Mark Despo, that's one of the guys that when I was a cook at the Waring House, him and Alec were out front as the Frere brothers playing stuff, and I remember going, geez, I need to be on the other side of this kitchen wall. I need to be out there. I told him that night, thanks for doing what you do. I know you get thanked a lot, but I want you to know that I'm one of the seeds that grew from what you planted.
I'm also one of the seeds that grew
and
from
he
what
was
they
really
planted.
touched by that, and then some of the alumni that was in the audience that night, like my high school principal, and I think Dave McKay was your high school principal, and a couple of these other familiar faces that I haven't seen in years that, you get to just unload it on the crowd. I mentioned it as well that night. I'm standing singing that last song, The Way. Everybody gets to hear $100 Roads, but, The Way is kind of like my prayer. And I got to sing it right where my parents were married 40-something years ago, right there in that church on the altar. So that to me was a milestone. Playing with all those people was a milestone. You and your brother make it such a good show. I just love when I'm working with Caleb because him and I have very similar ears when it comes to live setup.
You guys do?
So, just being apart, and like nobody'd really seen each other. Everything was back and forth with lockdown. So I think we all took a different value to it than just the usual, hey, come out and see this tonight. It was a golden lineup with so many songs that were so heartfelt. Annalise crushed the room.
Right off the top.
That was heavy stuff. I just love that woman and the way she's got this innocence about her that brings that much more emotion and fluidity to the music. And I take away from all of my performers around me. It's hard to explain. You are your influences, right? And
Absolutely.
You grow up listening to said musicians. Myself, it was a lot of classic rock just due to my age and stuff. And I fell in love with Pink Floyd and David Gilmour, especially his songwriting and that, that English folk type music, but blown out into bigger rock. And to hear everyone, to this day, still, Mark Despo blows me away on the guitar. He is just fabulous. Some of us get up there, we just strum away like I did just now, and strumming away on a song just so you have backing to sing it. But there's a whole immersion of an art style that happens, and I'm pretty stoked to see the people that are still doing it and the people that are growing at doing it and evolving like we're doing right now today.
Absolutely. And is there something, like you were saying, that your fellow county musicians are kind of like an influence for you? Was there something about performing with us all last fall that kind of, gave you another sense of hope or, pushed your resilience to a new level to get through this current COVID storm that we're all in?
Look at it I forget what movie or what character I can quote it to, but look at it like a lightning rod. I'm there, not to be like a vampire, but like I'm there collecting all your energy. You know, I'm taking away what's being given to the room, but I've got a wider antenna and a higher frequency that I'm picking up on, and it really recharged me. We hadn't played in a while. It's been off and on with gigs. You know, you book some gigs, and then the province would get locked down, so all your gigs would get canceled, and it was just like, okay, well, I don't want to bother booking anything because who knows what's going to happen. But that night especially, like, I was walking on my tippy toes for a couple days after that.
Same.
Yeah. So there's a lot to be said for the collective art of it. I've played my first gig back Friday night in downtown Belleville. The house was chanting my name between songs. Mm-hmm. That was so cool. I've only had that happen one other time. But I think that the people are making it known that how much they appreciate it just being there. I tried rehearsing for it even, and it was like, okay, whatever. I know these songs. It's just a matter of keeping my voice warm enough that I can make it through the 3-hour set. And you stress about every little thing, every little wire, every little buzz in the sound system. You hear all that, but they don't hear a darn thing.
They don't.
They just hear live music, and they're so happy to have it that it really came back. And like, you know as well as I do, there's intimate times where you like to sit back and just play self-soothing for yourself and just go through that. And one of my rules is if I give myself goosebumps on stage, then I've probably got most of the audience there too.
Absolutely.
I play at home for that reason, but then there's the human energy exchange. Sorry, I was getting around to it here. There's that level of, there's these 5 or 6 people here. I was singing to them today. And this room, this legendary room, there's all these different levels of energy transfer that are happening. But when you get a room full of people, the applause is cool, whatever. Clapping is so ape-like. I don't know. It's hard to explain. But there's a shine.
Mm-hmm. I completely understand.
That happens in the room, and it's not just about you anymore.
No, it's not.
And it's not ever been about me being the center of attention. It's been about just opening that light in the room and having everyone be a part of it. And that, to me, is the spiritual payment for the evening. That's the stuff that feeds me into wanting to do it more.
Yeah, it feeds your resilience. I played at the Regent Theatre to sold-out crowds twice, mm-hmm. and there's just something about the entire theater as a collective whole and what that gives mm-hmm. to you. Tony, thank you so much for coming here today and being part of Made in the County After the Storm.
It's my honor. Thank you for keeping me involved in the whole scene here. I really feel at home. It's good.
That is it for today's episode of Made in the County After the Storm. A special thank you to Krista Delby, Tess Gerard, Rihanna Harris, Tony Forbes, and Shauna Hogan for sharing their stories and their talents. As always, a special thank you to Sam Dubois for the composition of our opening theme song, and thanks to you for listening to this podcast. This podcast is made possible by the County Foundation and Factor Canada. This episode of Made in the County After the Storm was produced by Logan Summers, sound engineered by Tyler Carnreich, with assistance from Cameron Norman and Adelaide Parks. Thank you to our partners on this episode at Loyalist College, the Prince Edward Arts Council, and Shatterbox Theatre. Visit theregenttheatre.org or our social media pages to find movie and concert showtimes or to become a member of the Regent Theatre Foundation. Our next episode of Made in the County will feature students from PECI, music, and more. If you like what you heard today, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. Previous episodes of Made in the County now available on the Regent Theatre's YouTube channel. My name is Megan Hutton, and this has been Made in the County.